Yeah, there we go. Alrighty, so Ready Player One, the book. I thought I had this recorded somewhere, but I can't find it. And so I guess I have to re-record some of this. The book of it, I read quite a while back, and honestly, like, it's strange. I would say it's both exactly like the movie and a completely different story. Like they strangely managed to pull that off in a way it's hard to describe. Like the sense of the story is there with the characters there and the quest, I guess you would call it, is there. But some of the details and the feel of the characters are different. The feel of the setting is a little more adventure than oppressive dystopia. And yeah, like just many of the actual adventure portions of it, the feel of them have changed in the book. I don't know that I like one or the other better. Like I like the movie as a good movie. Um, the book, I kind of liked the fact that with the book they did some things that they couldn't do with the movie. And I mean, I know the book came first. I'm not mistaking that anyway. But yeah, I mean overall I'd rate the book at a solid 6.2 out of a 6.5. So a 6.2 out of a 6.5. I could revisit it again. There's some things that I feel, and I don't have much right to criticize. He's a successful author who's made a work that's loved by a lot of people. So I don't I don't know that there's a lot of room for saying he made mistakes. I just feel like there are aspects of that story that were, I don't know, rushed. Like he does some things in there that especially when there's the scene where like the technical support job thing going on. Like there's a whole lot of like parts of the story where he he benefits from having set things up beforehand that you're not informed of beforehand. It's a little too come in and fix the things after the fact. It almost reminds me a little bit of like the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where in the end they confront the time traveler by saying, well, when we win this competition, we'll travel back in time and set up this such that we can do this. Like, it's too much like writing yourself out of a corner you wrote yourself into. Um, and so I didn't like some of that stuff. And like, I have to admit that there are parts of like how they did things in the movie that came off more cleanly written, like how they set things up with the how to trap Sorrento and his Sixers, um, with the fake like a VR within a VR kind of uh, ploy. That's a little more creative than I think some of the things that were done with this. Um, but by the same token, I really actually like the quests better in the book. And I realize some of them would just be hard to do. But I mean, some of the aspects of that, like I was a little anxious when people kept talking about how part of the like you have the challenge that gets you the key, and then the challenge to get to the gates and uh, solve the gate quest um, to then get stage 1, 2, and 3 under your belt. They're really like two-part quests, and so I kind of really liked that. And each one of those was sort of like a worthwhile read, like the challenge to figure them out. That was fun. Um, I do feel that like when I first heard about some of them, like he'd have to redo a whole movie bit for bit. I'm like, that sounds like filler material. Like I've done National Novel Writing Month, and sometimes you're working on a piece and the story's doesn't feel like it's going to be long enough, so you do a whole chapter of the character, you know, doing something where they end up reading a whole scene or quoting a scene to a friend or something. It seemed like a filler, a cheat almost. And but when I actually read what they were doing, I was like, oh, this is karaoke. This is you look at a movie and see a actor playing a role and go like, could I do that role that well? And acting like an actor acting a scene for a movie. I'm like, oh, I get this now. And it's not the horror show or the filler that I thought it was going to be. Um, so I actually like that turned out better than I thought it would. Um, some of like I think I was less into some of the things where like he had to reenact a video game or beat a video game from first person perspective that's usually fought as a side scroller or something like that. And I felt like that was done that way. And then like at the end part where there's something similar where like he ran out of ideas, so he rehashed things he'd used earlier in the book. I'm like, I think we could have gotten something else interesting in there. I did kind of like the music, using the music in a way that they hadn't done before. Like everybody tried to do this and they did it all wrong because they didn't think about the thing in the same way as he did. Um, so there was definitely some things that were better than the movie and some things that like were spots I feel like the story could have been improved or not so much like I just wasn't there for it. It took me out of the story a little bit. But overall, worthwhile movie. Now, back to one of my favorite parts of doing this series is creative prompts inspired by Ready Player One, the book. Um, first one I'm going to go with, number one, is so in the in the in the book, the first competition is to go through a sort of famous D&D module called the Tomb of Horrors, and you meet a uh, the Lynch, the evil undead lord of the tomb, and for whatever reason chose to play a video game of Joust against him to win. That seems so silly. Like there's got to be a different way to do that. But um, at any rate, the thing about the Tomb of Horrors that's sort of funny is there's a somewhat notorious in D&D trap in the Tomb of Horrors. It's it's an archway that you unthinkingly could pass through without checking for a trap. And what this does is when you get to the other side of if I remember correctly, I think you get to the other side of the archway and it swaps your alignment so that your character becomes evil. And then if you try to pass through the gateway The other way, it swaps your gender. If you try to go back through again to swap it back, it deposits you at the front gate, minus all your equipment. So basically naked. And so, like, for me, when I'm looking at this idea, like, it just mentions that they're going through the Tomb of Horror, they never mention that particular trap. But I think, like, that could totally change the story. Like, the main character loses all their equipment and shows up essentially naked and the wrong gender at the gate to enter the tomb. So they don't have enough equipment to get back through the tomb. So they have to, and especially in the case of like a poor Gunter, who, I mean, if you wrote this kind of story in a different setting where you don't use, it's not a fan fiction but your own thing, I would say like having the main character be a young man who has like the poorest version of the equipment. You get one avatar and one avatar only, and you can't afford to do anything with that. To force a change on your avatar, especially one of gender or sex, to then have that character interact with what's supposed to be like the boy meets girl aspect of it. Now the whole dynamic has changed. It's two young women who are rivals in this quest. And like, it's like one of them's not a woman, but he can't admit that because he has a crush on the girl, and it's just like it changes a whole bunch of the dynamic of how that plays. And once they become rivals long enough, how do you come out to this person as like, oh no, this is the consequence of a trap I went through in the first competition? I think that would be a fun story to tell. I think it would be weird. It would be hard to do well, but I think like because it's so hard to do, it almost justifies doing that story that way. All right, story 2. An asteroid in VR space where players on a team of legends with brand deals and commercials that they do tell tavern tales of their adventures through pop culture, and show off their trophy room full of prizes from pop culture. I think that that's sort of hinted or kind of suggested where he has the asteroid planetoid that he has, where he has his broadcasting station, where he covers potential clues and all that kind of stuff. But like, I feel like it'd be more fun just to do a setting that's an asteroid where like famous VR adventurers tell tavern tales. Like, trying to think of some of the famous tavern tales type stories. I know Larry Niven did his Tavern Tales series, and there are a few other somewhat famous ones. I think there's like a women's detective agency or something like that. But like doing Tavern Tales style. Oh, Callahan's Cross Time Saloon, of course. Yeah, there you go. There's a Tavern Tales style setting, but doing it as like Easter egg filled stories of adventures of VR players while they're sitting in what like the Batcave / Fortress of Solitude, full of trophies of adventures through pop culture. That would be fun. Okay, we're running a little long. Number 3 is the story bit where he does he moves to what is it, Ohio or something, and he's hold himself off in an apartment as a professional gunter at that point. To me, there's like an almost lead in to a story of a jaded Jason Bourne kind of character who's holed up, and in this case, kits himself out with a lot of cyberpunk stuff that allows him to uh, be a sort of a cyberpunk mercenary kind of character. Whether or not he's fighting some big conspiracy or people who are out to get him, I don't know. But the other part of that is like showing the character living that sort of monastic life, holed up in that little place, and gradually in the story as it unfolds, uncovers that something broke him once, and as you get through the story, maybe it's one story, maybe it's a couple books or something like that, as you get to the end of the series of events, it's sort of a chance at redeeming himself as a human being, escaping that sort of monastic, like deeply wounded kind of character to become a whole human being again. And then number 4, I mean, the other half of that concept, I think, wasn't done as well as I could have hoped for. But, I mean, like, you have a shot at a dystopian cyberpunk setting style Ocean's 11. Like a good, or The Italian Job, a really good kind of heist movie. Or a heist book, however you want to frame it. And, like, doing that in a very sort of techno-savvy, dystopian, cyberpunk future setting, I don't know that I've seen a good one done. And I mean, no offense to this author, but I did kind of feel like he hinted at the possibility of that working, but the execution was a little too, like, we didn't see the pieces we needed to see to go along well for the ride. It was a little too filled in afterwards. So, number 5, there was a part of me that was like, I wonder what would happen if that last confrontation they had to get to the last gate. What if that explosion that wiped out so much on that throne world, or whatever you want to call it, actually destroyed the gate, so it was impossible to complete the quest? And at that point, you just accept, like, that circumstance sets in motion the fact that the Oasis becomes a realm with nobody controlling it. It's free growing, it is its own thing now. And the competition between sides to try to control it destroyed the only path to controlling it. Now it is a thing without control. And what does that become? It's a Wild West. It's like, to me that sounds like an interesting consequence. And once that happens, when nobody has the chance of controlling it, and so many people sacrificed so much to try to get there, the people who were competing to try to get to the win scenario, the victory, now have nothing left but the ashes of everything they've burned to get there, and a burning resentment about the people who got in your way. It's like vendettas against one another. And number 6. I feel like there's also a possibility for a story like this in which we have to acknowledge that some people live in a world where the circumstances of their life mean there's no chance that they'll ever be the victor. And so, like, for a person like that, yeah, they don't want to do the wrong thing, so they don't want to become a sixer. But, there is a certain mercenary quality at a certain point where, like, this gives me the chance to be enough of a mercenary that I can help as a freelancer without selling myself to somebody on a permanent basis. Like, they don't own me after this. I will do some mercenary work for them. But when I do this job, whether or not they succeed or not, I walk away. And so, to a certain degree, there's room for a character or characters. Like the two guys, they have the potential of being characters who might, like, until one of them is killed in the story, they don't have necessarily any real reason not to pick a side with the corporation. But as soon as the corporation killed one of them, it's sort of like, well, yeah, he killed my brother. Why would I side with them? But until then, there's no reason why they can't sell their sword to the bad guy in the story. And so it's entirely possible for them to run a couple jobs for them, especially if it means that they are able to secure their lives outside the Oasis. And so, like, I feel like that harsh moment where, like, it would be really fitting for a more cyberpunk version of this kind of story to be able to have characters effectively betray the main character and the cause and the quest for good, but in such a way that you can look at them and go, like, yeah, I kind of understand why they did it. And I can't hold it against them because their lives were short and miserable and didn't have much longer left in the world. And in order to give themselves a future, they kind of had to do it. Like, could you write the story in such that the hero maybe not forgives them for it, but understands why they did it and won't, seek revenge for it? But that betrayal, I think the story of a betrayal like that in its own setting, or with some of the key points to get you all the parts you need to get it right, but enough of the story changed, I think that could be a decent one. And this is running long. It's been so long, I don't think I have the knack for keeping this under 25 minutes. So we're getting close there. Sorry about this. Maybe I'll be better next time. All right. Uh, Happy creating and take care of yourselves.